Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. So, what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, it's part 3 of the trilogy of paintings taken from our recent painting retreat in the New Forest. And we're going to be having a go at painting this lovely little woodland scene, but using watercolour and soft pastels. But it does work as a conventional watercolour if that's what you like to do. So, come and join me and we'll paint this step by step together. Oh, before we start, again, I've got a very short video. It's only about a minute long of our recent trip. So hope you enjoy that. So we boarded the minibus and took a trip deep into the New Forest. It was such a tranquil and beautiful spot with so many opportunities for plein air painting. And considering this was early May in the UK, we were very lucky with the weather. And while some just simply like to sketch, others like to get their paints out. And of course the famous New Forest ponies are everywhere to be seen. A great day's painting had by all, and it's back to the hotel for a well-earned gin and tonic. And here's today's reference photo, which today's tutorial is just loosely based on. Today's materials: my paper is some Fabriano Artistico, it's 100% cotton, cold press finish, 300 pounds, so it's nice and thick so it won't need stretching, but of course any decent watercolour paper will do. And my colours today are cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, cobalt blue, burnt umber, burnt sienna, Payne's grey, and I'm using some soft pastels, and I'll give you some more details of those later. My brushes are a large Harkay, and from my range a 3/4 inch flat, number 12 and number 6 round. Now, I did have a few practice attempts first. This one was a bit fussy and I didn't really have a focal point to it. And this one, the water was a real mess and a little bit overworked. So, this is my 3rd attempt and I thought I'd go for a square format. Now, the pencil sketch is very simple, so no drawing template needed this week. Off we go, and I'm starting by completely saturating the whole sheet of paper using my large Harkay brush. Then, while it's still very wet, I'm dropping in using my flat brush all the colours I'm listing below. And these are going in all very loosely. I'm not trying to be too neat and get them exactly inside all the pencil lines. And as always, all my greens are a mixture of cadmium yellow and cobalt blue, and for the darker, more bluey greens obviously, I'm putting in a lot more of the cobalt blue. Now, this really is a case where you mustn't fuss and fiddle with the paint. Let it paint itself, let it work for you. Too many brush strokes will just muddy your paint and you'll lose the freshness of the colour. My board is at an angle of about approximately 10 degrees, and that just helps the paint move. And so much of this comes down to confidence and not being afraid of making mistakes. I say this a lot to my students: don't be afraid. At the end of the day, what's the worst that can happen? You just lose a sheet of paper, but you've always learned something. This little dark edge to the riverbank is quite important. with this mix for the trees, it's still going in very wet, so you do have to work fairly quickly. And sometimes when I'm mixing my colours, I won't stir them up too much, just a few swirls, as it will help the colours separate slightly on the paper. Now the paper is still very much at the damp stage, so I'm not getting quite so much spreading of the paint, but I'm still getting some good soft edges. Let's stick in a little bit of yellow ochre here to just add a bit of interest. And this is a much thicker consistency of Payne's Grey, but still going in wet. Now I haven't used this Fabriano Artistico for some time now, but I have noticed it is staying wet for a nice long time, and that's obviously one reason for using cotton paper. The paper's still nice and damp, so I'm going to splat in some nice green textured foliage here. And I'm getting some lovely soft edges to these splats. So now we need to let this totally dry, so it's a perfect time for a short break, and as it's 10:30 in the morning, I've got myself a nice cup of Earl Grey. Next I'm spraying all this foreground with clean water, but not saturating the paper. And then painting in with the same tree colour the reflections. And it's always worth remembering with reflections, you'll always get the opposite angles in the water to what's above. And believe me, I've seen this done wrong on many occasions. So here, if your tree is vertical, then obviously your reflection will be vertical. Now, there's no trees above here, but I'm going to put those in later. Now I'm coming in with some real dark shadows with some Payne's Grey, and this now is wet on dry paper. And I'm even trying to get some dry brush texture by quickly dragging the brush across the surface of the paper. Okay, so now that's totally dry, I'm just keeping my brush flat and dabbing the top of the paper with some of this green mix to suggest some tree foliage. And of course a bit more splatting for some random foliage. And here I'm splatting in some burnt umber for the stony bank effect. Again, another light spray, and I'm using my number 6 brush to put in these smaller trees. Again, leaving plenty of gaps, because clearly a lot of the foliage will come in front of these trunks. And I'm lining up these trees with the reflections I painted earlier. And painting in some shadows here with a thicker consistency of the same colour. And I like to smudge a lot with my finger just to smooth off some of these edges. Next it's mixed media time, and I'm using this creamy coloured pastel pencil just to put in some root and grass details. Now, if you want to make this a finished watercolour painting, you can stop here as it stands alone as a finished piece of work. But I'm getting out my set of Sennelier's soft pastels. These are the chalky feel pastels, but if you have oil pastels, there's no reason why they shouldn't work as well. Now, I think these work fantastically well with watercolour, especially on textured watercolour paper. Now here I'm using the side of the pastel and lightly dabbing on top to create these lovely leaf textures. Now I've called these chalky based pastels, but in truth there's probably very little chalk in them. Good quality pastels like these will probably be all made up of pigment. And again, they're wonderful for smudging and getting those lovely soft edges. Here I'm using a light blue just to suggest some of the sky poking through the trees, as well as some colour into the reflection. And I'm even using a damp tissue here to smudge some of those edges. A little bit of brown here for some texture on the trees. And I find just painting with pastels like this is just something different from a conventional watercolour. And another handy thing is you can paint with watercolour directly on top of the pastel. I do think it's always good fun to try new things. And here with a bit of sort of sandy colour to get that pebbly beach effect. Now, I did have someone the other day put in the comments, why do I pronounce pastel wrong? Surely it should be pastel. Well, that's how we pronounce it in the UK. After all, we did invent the language. Only joking, of course. And here a lighter version of the same colour for a bit of sparkle. And here I'm just taking a slightly damp tissue and rubbing lightly back and forth to create a little bit of movement in the water. Back to my soft pastels, and here with a little bit of white for some little sparkling light. So if you're interested, at the end of the video I have a selection of other paintings that I've done of the New Forest, with a couple also painted with watercolour and soft pastels. Let's get a little bit of that green reflected into the water. There we go, all done. I don't want to overwork it, and this one all done in just over an hour. And before you ask, I am going to protect with a little bit of Frisk Pastel Fixative. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. And remember, this one can work as a conventional watercolour if you don't want to add the pastels. But if you have got some, why not just give it a go and be brave? So, coming up now, as promised, are a few other paintings that I've done over the years of the New Forest, and I hope you enjoy those. But in the meantime, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already, it is free, leave a comment. I do read every single one, can't always reply to them all. And of course, I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Have a great week, bye for now.